This is lesson 6.1, where are we in space? Now, where are we in space? Well, who's we? Well, we're talking about Earth, okay? So where's Earth in space? The Earth is the third planet from the sun. That is our center of our solar system, the solar system, sol meaning Latin for sun. We are roughly one of billions of planets in our actual galaxy, but we're one planet of the 8 that orbit the sun. Now, the sun is just one star in the Milky Way galaxy, which has 100 to 400 billion different stars in that galaxy. Roughly 4,800 stars are born each second, and they decay just as fast. So you can figure there's somewhere between 100 to 400 billion stars. And the sun is just one of those stars. And we are one of the 8 planets that orbit that star. Okay, so, you know, we think of ourselves as a very important entity because we're the one piece of life that we know of, right? Everything we've ever known is here. Everything. All our presidents, all our important businessmen, all of our leaders, inventors, everybody. Even, the worst people in history are here on Earth, as far as we know. But, even with our accomplishments, we've just walked around the block. There's so much out there for us to accomplish and to see. But let's look at some of our real discoveries from the past. If we're going to start, we'd really start with the space race between the Cold War and the US in the late 50s and 60s. And this really started with Sputnik 1. Sputnik 1 was the first satellite to actually be launched in orbit from the Soviet Union. This came as a shock to many Americans during the space race in the Cold War era. The US would soon follow up with Explorer 1, which was more successful in duration, as it orbited 12 years to the 3-month of the Sputnik 1. But Explorer 1 was just, our first position in space. So that was the first satellite that we launched. After that, the USSR would beat us to the punch again. On April 12th, 1961, Yuri Gagarin became the first astronaut to actually enter space. 4 years after joining the Air Force, he was selected by the USSR for the Vostok 1 program. And he completed his mission 2 years later when he crossed over both oceans in a 108-minute orbit. And that all seemed to be going fine until he had trouble disconnecting from his service module. And he almost crashed entering the atmosphere. Luckily, he parachuted and landed safely, and we can talk about him without a frown on our face. The next big achievement would be by the U.S. As Mariner 4 would actually perform a Mars flyby. So we actually reached another planet in terms of a probe flyby. And that would happen in June of 1965. It's funny, that's when my dad was born, so that long ago. The next big achievement would be us landing on Mars, Apollo 11, right? So July 20th, 1969, Neil Armstrong and his co-pilot, Buzz Aldrin, would actually land on Mars with the Apollo lunar module Eagle in July of 1969. And it still remains one of our biggest scientific achievements. It's still a huge feat. I mean, up to this day, 12 people have landed on the moon. So after all these years, roughly 50 years later, it's still only 12 people of that, and there was that first 2. So we started somewhere, and it's still a giant achievement in science. The next big achievement for our planet to have would be to actually have a space station, and that would happen with the Salyut in April 19th, 1971. USSR got us again. They were the first to have an actual space station, while we focused on deep space with Voyager 1 and Voyager 2, which still remain to be the furthest man-made object in space. They're roughly 152.2 astronomical units away from us at this point. I just looked that up. So those 2 space probes, have sent us multiple data as they've performed multiple planet flybys of everything from Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and one has even passed close to Pluto. So the next step for us would be the ISS. This was a multinational, meaning multiple nations, multicultural space station, modular space station that we have that's orbiting the Earth. And this actually allows for ongoing research and development in aeronautical engineering and has been in orbit for more than 22 years. So that in itself has been a giant feat for the United States and other. Now, as the US and others look to be a multi-planetary species, this is when these rovers come in. So our latest achievement has really been in exploring Mars with the Curiosity rover and the Perseverance rover. Now we've landed on Mars. These recent missions have actually enabled us to learn a lot about our nearest neighboring planet and what it may actually have to offer us in the future. How do we see most of the things that we see from space? Well, or from the ground. Well, comes from space-based telescopes and ground-based telescopes. Our greatest telescope currently is a space-based telescope, and this allows us to see 10 to 15 billion light years away. Now, to put that in perspective, 1 light year is 5.8 trillion miles. It's a long distance, okay? So our current telescope, the Hubble Space Telescope, has allowed us to see so much of what's out there. But again, we're just scratching the surface here. The next big achievement for us is going to be 10 times that power with the GMT, Giant Magellan Telescope. This is a multiple nation work that's being done in Chile, and it's a ground-based telescope that used a very complicated refraction process to actually achieve 10 times the resolving power of that Hubble Space Telescope. And we're doing it from the ground. So how far have we actually traveled? So you think as the moon is such a big accomplishment, but like I said, it's around a walk around the block. The universe is so much bigger than you think. To get from the, what you see in movies isn't exactly how it works. What we've done by getting from the Earth to the moon is incredible. 238,900 miles, okay? That would take you, at traveling at 100 miles an hour, that would take you over 100 days in a car, okay? It's an incredible feat for us to travel that far. But again, it's just scratching the surface. The farthest that we've ever been was the Apollo 13 mission. If you haven't watched the movie, please watch the movie. And that actually put us close to 249,000 miles away. 249,000 miles away because we went around the backside of the moon. That's the furthest we've ever been as humans. So still the furthest. But again, scratching the surface, guys. Okay, our next step would likely be Mars. To actually visit Mars would be a huge feat. Huge. It's roughly 152 million miles away on average. The distance change. This means when we actually arrive on Mars, we'll have traveled 636 times further than the distance between the Earth and the moon. So that would be a big feat, as you could tell by Elon's reaction. How far have we actually sent something man-made? Again, Voyager 1. Voyager 1 is the furthest object that we've sent into space. It's roughly 152.2 astronomical units. If you don't know what that is, that's equal to the distance between the center of the Earth and the center of the Sun. That 1 astronomical unit. We've traveled 152.2 astronomical units away from the Earth. But still, it wouldn't even break out of our solar system traveling at this speed, and it's traveling fast, guys. I'm talking, thousands of miles an hour. It wouldn't even break out of our solar system for another 30,000 years. So it's going to be a while. Don't hold your breath. And while 14.2 billion miles is far, that being the distance, it's just a tiny speck on what we could actually possibly do, if you just were to make everything invincible and we could just fly wherever we want. But our solar system is just one solar system inside of a interstellar neighborhood. This interstellar neighborhood's right here. Okay, here's the sun. Here's its neighborhood. Here's the whole entire Milky Way galaxy. It's a big difference here, okay? So we sit next to the Orion Spiral or Orion Arm in the Milky Way galaxy, and we're in a group of interstellar neighborhood stars. You can see all those right here. So we're still 4.24 light years away from our closest star. Remember, a light year being 5.8 trillion miles. And inside of this Milky Way galaxy, this has over 100 to 400 billion stars. A star being just like our Earth. And it's roughly 105,700 light years wide. Think about how wide that is. So we're just one star inside of this giant galaxy. And while you think that galaxy is big, don't hold your breath. So we are one galaxy inside of a neighborhood of galaxies. We call this a local group of galaxies, okay? And we're one of the 54 galaxies that exist inside this local galactic group. And this local galactic group is estimated to be 10 million light years wide. 10 million light years wide. Remember how far a light year is? 5.8 trillion miles. Remember, I'm going to keep embedding that into your brain. The closest galaxy to us is still 2.5 million light years away, and that's the Andromeda galaxy. You can actually see it on some nights. And while that's far, and while the galactic group is wide, that's still only a tip of the iceberg. So that local galactic group is just a speck inside of the giant Virgo supercluster, which contains at least 100 other groups, just like the local galactic group, of galaxies, just like our local group. And the distance from across the Virgo supercluster is over 110 million light years wide. Okay, to put that in perspective. And while you think that's far, that's nothing, because the Virgo supercluster is just a giant or a little tiny cluster inside of the magnificent Laniakea supercluster, which has over 100,000 other galaxies. From one side to the other, it is over 520 million light years in distance. And while you think that's incredible, that Laniakea is just a speck inside of the entire observable universe, everything we're actually able to see. This has over 2 trillion different galaxies, and it contains more stars than there are grains of sand on the entire Earth. The estimated distance across the observable universe is 93 billion light years. And again, don't hold your breath, because the observable universe is just a speck of what we think might be out there due to cosmic inflation. We'll talk about it another time. It's incredible. The observable universe could just be a light bulb on the planet Pluto compared to what we think could be out there based on, scientific measurement. So it's not to say that we are insignificant, but to think this stuff is right around the corner and we could travel there anytime we like, it's just not necessarily true. But who's to know what our future holds? But one thing we do know is that the Earth is just one planet inside one interstellar neighborhood, from one solar system, inside one galaxy, inside one local group of galaxies, inside one supercluster, inside of another supercluster, inside of another supercluster, inside of an observable universe, inside of the entire unobservable universe, which we have no point of seeing right now. So we got a long ways to go, guys. That's okay.